Hey everyone, this is Andy, and I'm going to try and be short with this because I'm actually butting up against the deadline, and I'm not sure how long my video is going to upload, or my video is going to take to upload. So I want to talk about our readings for week 3. It was the E-Reserves and then Moltmann and the Hope of Glory book. I'll talk primarily on Moltmann. I think it was more Moltmann because I think it was more thought-provoking. I have 2 points there. The first is his talk about God's immutability, or lack thereof, in his perspective. And then the second piece is his criticism of Bart, and Bart's perspective on how we can know God. So, to start off with, Moltmann does not think that God is immutable. Secondly, he does not think, or does not agree with Bart's philosophy on how we can know God, epistemology, so to speak. He thinks that God can be known through history. He agrees with Pannenberg. God discloses himself through interacting in history. I actually disagree with that because I agree with Barth. So he takes Aristotelian doctrine of immutability, looks at it from an Aristotelian perspective, and then says no, because immutability precludes God from being free. So I agree. I agree that God should be free. I believe that God is free. He's so sovereign that he is autonomous. Despite the fact that he confines himself, despite the fact that he is immutable. The reason he can be immutable and free is because he's a transcendent being. He interacts with the world only tangentially, as Barth would say. And therefore, what doesn't change in his transcendence and his noumenal otherness does change not his being, but his activity. And I think that's what Barth's saying. So I'll stop there because it can get way too muddled in me making this up as I go. So one issue, he kind of puts Hegel and Barth in the same category. That's an issue because Hegel believes in God as spirit. It's phenomenal. That is to say, he believes God is a phenomenal being. God is interrelated with the world on the same plane. Barth says no, God is not on the same plane. He's transcendent other. Because if God were, and were dependent on humanity, as Hegel says, in interrelatedness, to be being, or becoming, whatever he would say, then he would not be free. That's the biggest issue, and that's what Barth's criticizing. And then Barth comes in and says, no, God is being, and each person is its own being and yet makes up a single being. It's paradox. It makes no rational sense. The reason we know that is because God has disclosed himself in Jesus. There's multiple different facets. I am running out of time. But I think that's the biggest piece, is that I think he misunderstands Barth because he misunderstands the transcendent otherness of Barth's theology versus the materialistic form of Hegel's God as triunity and self-interrelatedness. So, therefore, I think he, in his agreement with Pannenberg and in his philosophy or theology of God's revelation in history, I think there's limitations because he is relying on the modernistic rational constructs that, Hegel and Nietzsche and Kierkegaard criticize, even though he quotes them, and Barth destroys both the postmodern and the modern tenets of that in his philosophy. Ultimately, we have horizons, as Nietzsche would say, and in those perspectives, we have our knowledge. So God reveals to us in our own experiences. God reveals himself to us in our own experiences, in our own subjective existence. And yet at the same time, because he's so absolute and tangentially interacts with creation and existence, he can be free, he can be non-changing, but at the same time can change because of the subjective piece of that. Oh, that wasn't as articulate as I would have liked to have been, but I'm in a rush, and I didn't write an essay on it, so I'm not like a professorially trained, I guess. So nice to see you all again. My question would be, broadly, what are your thoughts on the Moltmann topic? But what affects, or what is the impact of believing in God's self-revelation, or that we can know God's self-revelation simply through history? Do you think it's materialistic, or do you not? And I will clean up that question in the document, or in the write-up. Bye, everyone.